On May 23, 1993, wax, or the discovery of television among the bees, entered the internet, projected by a cable into a wall. Inside that internet, there are no movies there. And so wax, waiting until the last frame enters the wall, then begins the first movie on the internet, to continue forever, for that is how the first movie on the internet begins, at the first frame after the last frame. A true story, and this is that movie, and in reverse. And so, we begin.
As you are aware, the internet is a DVD on a coffee cup. I could show you how that happens, how the handle of the coffee cup becomes the hole in the center of the DVD. How the interior of the coffee cup disappears into the surface of a flat disc as I spin. I am the first movie on the internet. I am inside a DVD on a coffee cup. I could show you how that happens. How the movie appears between two frames, between the front and the back of the DVD disc. I am the first frame after the last frame. I am the movie in the DVD on the coffee cup. I am wax, or the discovery of television among the bees. I am 999 years, 364 days, 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 48 seconds long. And then it was dark, until dawn.
Shut the book. Left the building. And gutted my car. For the long journey home. Shut the book. Left the building. And gutted my car. For the long journey home. Shut the book. Left the building. And gutted my car. For the long journey home. Shut the book. Left the building. And gutted my car. For the long journey home.
The turn of the Garden of Eden sign somehow motivates the backwards tilt of that pentagon, which by the mysteries of space and all that it represents caused that independent object to change into a hexagon, which as we know is the face of the BTV and familiar shape repeated throughout the hive of the real and unreal bees. Oh, happy shape! As it retreats, it collects with it a large number of other hexagons, who implode to create a solid rotating cone. They do this using local rules, which allow them through much ignorance and persistence to create great structures which will at least last through the winter. The atomic bee car, something like a small planet with rotating rings that describe in the void a missing outer spherical shell. It turns and turns without getting anywhere, as any good anti-gravity car must. We're back to passage again through the ectoplasmic rings that brought us into the void in the first place. With such symmetry, we can be sure that we are safe. From the irregular void of ectoplasmic tunnel to the dark at the center of a panorama, seen from the top. The wall of the stone hive is shrinking on its sides. We are being shat, but don't worry, we have come from the Pure Land, and will not need to wash ourselves.
I knew I wouldn't be alone for long. I knew I wouldn't be alone for long. I knew I wouldn't be alone for long. I knew I wouldn't be alone for long.
A long inflexible strip of image land deep in the cave, where Jacob walks through large lights, shadows, and floor-gripping rock formations, on his way nowhere in particular.
Once I had traveled into the darkness, I was sure to be followed back. Once I had traveled into the darkness, I was sure to be followed back. Once I had traveled into the darkness, I was sure to be followed back. Once I had traveled into the darkness, I was sure to be followed back.
Living pixels rotating at high speed bring us unstable pictures from the beginning of the world, which has been in progress for a while, and indeed has led to the establishment of so many things and places that we might not recognize many of them if we were asked what they were. Right now we are, of course, heading someplace new. Jacob turning the corner on the moon. Bright lights behind him. The monolith lies ahead, waiting to begin whistling. Jacob is capably navigating not only the bumps and crevices on the floor, but also invisible buildings and other sorts of obstacles which inhabit the inner space his fourth-dimensional shoes are walking through. Here we see what he sees as he turns past the sharp edge of a noise-walled building. Jacob walks along a strip corridor at the bottom of the tunnel-shaped frame, heading though the cave towards other shots not connect to this one by any more than the motion of time, the trajectory of his simple body shape, and the strange unity of the square, which only allows the diagonal as opposition, and so effectively swallows all resistance. One of these dangerous diagonals appears to trip up Jacob and send him off to nowhere in particular, where nothing awaits him until the end of it all, the end perhaps being no more than the edge of one of these squares. You'll have to visit the previous shot to enjoy the fact that this one repeats it at a different angle, as if it were part of a different time or at the very least part of a different place, which of course it can't be, until time and the page of your screen tear them apart. Jacob has stopped, and looks up towards the top of the cave, as if to investigate a leak in the roof. Noises tell him of things that might want to speak to him in words, if words could look like things which themselves could speak.
That afternoon, out of the dark machinery, one of the dead of the future arrived. That afternoon, out of the dark machinery, one of the dead of the future arrived. That afternoon, out of the dark machinery, one of the dead of the future arrived. That afternoon, out of the dark machinery, one of the dead of the future arrived.
Jacob looks up, showing us his back, among the icicles and snowdrifts of an empty cave. Night is upon him, and the radio needs batteries. A patch of cave wall opens like a mouth without teeth, throat, or anything usable by a body. So perhaps we should say that a patch of cave wall opens like the mouth on a flexible cloth puppet handled by an invisible expert lost in a room so dark that only the glow-in-the-dark cloth of that mouth is visible, as well as the strange dark rough texture of the cloth visible beneath the glow. Traveling down between parallel rows of white hexagons, wrong-way teeth or endless tonsils filled with germs fractally filtered from either the blood of the mouth's owner, or the food that travels down it. The waste has collected in a crystalline pattern that seems to depart into the distance, but really is only explorable by optical, rather than expeditionary, tactics. At the bottom of the throat is the stomach, entrance to which void is signaled by the supermarket sign, made of boxes so small and fine that they must be made by the same porcelain manufacturer responsible for the china ballerina on the bureau of the bedroom at my grandparents' house, who, too, are lost or missing in the dark now, years later. That dancer never moved either so well or so mechanically as these spinning boxes, whose invisible mechanism for movement is a marvel lost to makers in the ordinary worlds. The dancing hexagons move in and out of place, the space between BTV channels, surface of what makes the void according to Jacob. A tiny sphere or ugly planet approaches out of the dark. It is a place that we will become quite familiar with over the next millennium. It is a place with a garden and refrigerator. A long wall of road white hexagons, ribs on the inside of the whale, way past the throat, down in the pit with the boat and other passengers swallowed. A sphere with 4 heads, who must be the dead of the future, traveling backwards through time, looking for pasture. We can see up through their necks, and learn that their heads are hollow. Each is attached by stone cranium to a facet-cut planet covered with triangular fields, mark of an agriculture that will always remain unnatural and unknowable to the living. We are once again launched down that passage of shapeless concentric rings, past the fabulous coffee table with the shiny revenge book, onwards, through, past the past, going nowhere but where we are going, wherever, forever.
It was grotesque, with 4 brains on a single body. I felt that I recognized it. It was grotesque, with 4 brains on a single body. I felt that I recognized it. It was grotesque, with 4 brains on a single body. I felt that I recognized it. It was grotesque, with 4 brains on a single body. I felt that I recognized it.
Jacob, standing far away in the cave, still looking up. Perhaps the back of his neck is supported by the collar of his helmet, so it is easy for him to walk around always looking up at the roof of the cave, where waves of hot air dance and the bees stare down with shining eyes, like the octopus in its ocean cave clacking its beak while staring through a near-human eye at the lost fish murmuring below, actually above, but the octopus can't tell the difference, and in this case the bees probably can't either. And it is nearly certain that soon Jacob won't either, as he makes the sad transition from costumed hero to lost octopus or fish. The void of the faceted sphere dissolves over Jacob's placid face. The prevention of such juxtapositions should be on his mind, as it certainly was in his education, but a few moments on holiday will dim the wits of even the most singular tourist. With things like this happening, it won't be long before Jacob meets his maker. Jacob still stares up at an air void as the darkling sphere vanishes. The infinitely fragmented surface of the cave, like a piano randomly expanded into too many dimensions, sends off harmonic tensions which call up the wind in his heart and in his gut. He will scoot through the cave towards his doom as if propelled by his own flatulence. Called by the mute interest of his stare at nothing, the sphere appears again above him, in strange perspective. The clockwork quartet disappears again. There is darkness at left side, and space is fluid. Fortunately, there is still a sharp, definite boundary between him and the complete absence of light, or is that space?
I was afraid, but I was drawn towards this thing. I was afraid, but I was drawn towards this thing. I was afraid, but I was drawn towards this thing. I was afraid, but I was drawn towards this thing.
The machine men twist by in a spin, moving from left to right. The razor edge of the cave light does not frighten them. Their work to generate some sort of electricity of the void spinning, which they use to power the stories that happen in their distant world. Their activity pushes a strip containing Jacob, attentive and blank, backwards into the dark. The cave has become a cuckoo clock, and Jacob is part of the schematic scene which the clock presents to the world on the hour. He is no longer one of the spectators. The cave tilts back, drawn upwards to that corner where the hollow heads spun, and from which they are now missing. A shot log, taken from the forest, is now conveyed towards the villain's saw, where it will be mechanically split into identical planks.
I followed it deeper into the cave. That's where I would find my victim. I followed it deeper into the cave. That's where I would find my victim. I followed it deeper into the cave. That's where I would find my victim. I followed it deeper into the cave. That's where I would find my victim.
Jacob has begun to walk again. He appears from behind an outcrop at the top of the frame, heading towards the top of the cave. He is traveling so fast that the outcrops in other parts of the landscape have blurred and stretched, almost as if he was approaching the speed of light, there in the dark. Once again, we have switched to some infernal and external point of view, which uses itself to connect disparate spaces. The dead eye of this view pans down some bulbous honey-colored stone. A brave little screen floating with great precision in the dark. Framed Jacob is marching towards us. We see through the tiny window of our screen cell. The room is dark, and Jacob is far away. Time and space cross dissolve. Shots join and we pass through the projection of one world to the imprint of another. Jacob is standing, as always, and looking. Maybe he hasn't moved for hours. Perhaps the film is about to begin, and he is waiting off stage.
It was almost time. It was almost time. It was almost time. It was almost time.
The white and waxy cave. Jacob stands small in the corner, surrounded by still air and fluctuating stone walls, which might be part of a Potemkin village constructed by U.S. Park Service rangers and left intact for him to accidentally discover. Or perhaps he has stumbled up the staircase to heaven and, stopping halfway up to take off his hat, gotten lost on the landing, as the sound of the party fades away and the artichoke paste he had in his mouth an hour before, now sour and poisonous in his mouth, at first taste. A month has passed, so suddenly.
I used my programming skills to reshape the cave into a shield. I used my programming skills to reshape the cave into a shield. I used my programming skills to reshape the cave into a shield. I used my programming skills to reshape the cave into a shield.
The noise-walled building, active and flat, articulates the silent space. It is the shape of a maze piece. A door opens in the otherwise unrevealing flat. Live dinner appears. Eat. These curving walls are momentary illusions, curved, lost panoramas on their way to the trash, in the dark, that noise is antique canvas sputtering wetly on the pyre. Rome burns, or at least its picture does. The static walled building's shell becomes a shield made from the walls of the cave. Inside can be seen Jacob, still standing and watching. Perhaps he controls all this with eye-blinks or swallows, which we can't see so don't know.
From behind the shield, I would attack with the mark of Cain. From behind the shield, I would attack with the mark of Cain. From behind the shield, I would attack with the mark of Cain. From behind the shield, I would attack with the mark of Cain.
The wall seems to be protecting itself from the horizontally spinning mech-men of the sphere. They offered their exposed necks to Jacob, a sign of self-sacrificing yet murderous intent, part of their telepathic culture. Lacking proper throats and lungs, it is the only way they find polite to talk in threatening tones. A concerned eye is watching all of this, trapped in its socket. If you look closely, you can discern the eye light, a small light made to give a performer's eyes the impression of attentive beauty. Ready for your close-up. The eye twitches at signs on ancient screens where the target will soon be writhing, written into death there by an X shape, even now pointing itself in the fatal direction. The happy tankoid. The great X partitions it at the middle. There are lines of electronic haze across the screen, as it is summer inside the tube. A spinning hexagon hides and reveals a skull, which uses the rotation to scan the void. Small, oppositely placed nozzles, emitting invisible vapor left over from off-screen chemical processes, force the rotation on the axle places just behind the empty brain pan of the skull friend. This flywheel whirled slide by on its axle, hiding Jacob on its rim.
My reverie was disturbed by the sound of a telephone ringing in the cave. My reverie was disturbed by the sound of a telephone ringing in the cave. My reverie was disturbed by the sound of a telephone ringing in the cave. My reverie was disturbed by the sound of a telephone ringing in the cave.
Turned around and around. Jacob is now looking in any other direction at the same thing he was looking at just a few moments before, though it is not at all sure what that is exactly. The defensive shield that he generated through reverie has apparently dissolved as his attention has shifted. One shot dissolves to another, placing our lost eyes further back, until we see him tiny, still staring without moving. Even his eyes are frozen, caught in the glare of the frightening wax wall. Across the gap of the cut, we are treated with the sudden appearance of Ella's workplace, and perhaps that person herself, jacking in cell calls from everywhere while showing us her shoulder. Ella's patchwork of call connection brings us suddenly to another and familiar place. No family there, though, at the end of the void optic tube, which, as we stare down its telescopic perspective, seems to be speaking to us in reverse, using images previously seen moving forwards. Another of the dark corners of the rounded cave, where metal is ringing in our ears. Jacob appears again from behind rocks, walking towards us. Those are not his shoes making those step noises, but instead one of the composers, Theo Morales, with his hands in shoes, shuffling them across white sand in a box in a studio sometime in the relative future. Through a further invisible puppetry of meaning, it turns out that the ringing noise is a call for Jacob there in the cave, on a phone in a small white box recessed right in the cave wall. When Jacob picks up that phone in the cave, he is propelled. We join his personal point of view, seeing directly through his eyes, or at least picking up a momentary rectangular cross-section of his deep space picture brain, back to the car that flattened the dunes. First seen when he danced with the bees and visited the Garden of Eden in the space shuttle. It has to be pretty certain now that the dead are with us. We are with Jacob. And both Jacob and we are watching the dead as those fragmenting stars twirl in their cartoon void.
Was the dead wife of Zoltan Abbasid. She was calling from the moon. Was the dead wife of Zoltan Abbasid. She was calling from the moon. Was the dead wife of Zoltan Abbasid. She was calling from the moon. Was the dead wife of Zoltan Abbasid. She was calling from the moon.
Once again, we see a fatal car crash, which now is assuredly an image of our movie future. This is the crash that killed the dead wife of Zoltan Abbasid. Notice the cooling grill. It was while staring at such a grill on the front of a ruined Peugeot, touring through France during the Great War, that Abbasid had the idea to build an aluminum comb for his hives. Sadly, this odd moment of enlightened and somewhat random modernism has become the very image of his own future destruction, through a strange displaced revenge by his first wife, yet to be revealed, and when revealed, always opaque, who died through no fault of his, or her, own, but still has bad thoughts, which she will soon follow with bad actions. The sudden face of that same serious ghost, who should have a name but does not. We know who she is, but that is not enough. Limit 15 miles ridden on the flat road. Off-road, behind, is that ruined tin car, in which the dead once rode wherever they wanted, at least along roads. A living and luckier car passes by, over the top of the ignored flat words, racing along to other intersections.
In the language of Cain, she told me that a murder had been committed in the past. In the language of Cain, she told me that a murder had been committed in the past. In the language of Cain, she told me that a murder had been committed in the past. In the language of Cain, she told me that a murder had been committed in the past.
A B hexagon suddenly falls out of our eyes, into the untextured dark, down into the dark machine, where a system of levers and lights will measure its weight against an unknown standard. Don't worry. This valuable hex will be certified as A-OK, usable as local currency, and with a clack the great vending machine will grind, and deliver whatever soda or destiny or weapon we wanted to buy. The purchase dropping with a heavy thud out of the invisible universe inside the machine, dropping like the moon out of the sky onto Jacob's helmeted head. In some sky, there is a half moon. That's the romantic home of the dead, wired for distant speech. Only half of that light-sucking body is active at the moment. From a wax cylinder, we see the image of a speaking woman. These are the first recorded electronic moving images, encoded as audio frequency signals, then either stored on wax platters, or sent across the air or airless void to receiving radio sets. The wax discs had a few minutes to a side. John Logie Baird built special TV sets that attached to the radio, which converted the audio transmitted into the incoherent faces of your loved ones, and others who might be unknown to you. Strange and distant electronically disturbed automatic writing appear without warning, waning on the screen. In a repeating cycle, several pages appear, speaking like worms under X-ray inside your gut. Oscillator moires fill the screen, stuttering in several fixed twirls. The television tide is coming in. White snake-like fast oscillators ascend to heaven, avoiding the stairs, using the railing instead. All around them, snow falls upwards. The fatal and continuous carbon cartoon stars stretch themselves, as the scene shifts and the dead fidget, each waiting to assert itself and impress the living. The stern face of the dead driver of that ruined car takes the time to look out at us again. Like a small statue kept warm by a donated suit of clothing, she braves the unfeeling cold only so that we will know that she is there. The moon is far away, and we are not. Slow motion and long dead bees hang in the air, moving back and forth in a surrounding invisible matrix of polarized light, which points them the absolute direction of salvation, and also, by absence, indicates alternate directions. Dancing hexagons, remnants of the dancing bees, move their blank faces in a rotating dance, passing through one another as if they were made of light. The happy and correct spelling of the Garden of Eden cave, a sign moving its bones in the spring breeze, cleaning the propolis off the odd edges of its font shapes. As the rearrangement of that moving roadside sign finalizes itself, the movie makes a dissolve to the sad Zoltan Abbasid, a figure who is somehow attached to the pronouncement of future murder, either as instigator or victim, blank on either account.